Hello, everyone.
Hello, good afternoon.
How is it going?
Going well. Today we're discussing prioritization. Well, not how to prioritize, but what to prioritize. Especially in a space where vibe coding is available and you might be tempted not to prioritize everything. We'll just have the AI solve it. And all the departmental, organizational, engineering, cultural, and interpersonal issues that such assumptions might cause. How are you,
Yeah,
Adrian?
I'm fine so far. Actually, the topic goes a little bit into the direction of being fine as a startup CTO or not these days. So I am very much ICP of this topic of today. That is not something I could add. And I would say that no, I'm not a CTO anymore. Mainly, that's the reason why I'm not calling myself Stackable CTO anymore. So I'm more in the founder role now, but I'm still technically extremely involved. I think the single most changing aspect of the last years was the idea of vibe coding, and we never got away from that. So we tried to say agentic coding, not vibe coding. Come on, I give a crap. We call it vibe coding. Everyone knows we talk something to the AI and does it for us. That is what is vibe coding right now for me. And it changed several times. I had a conversation today with a colleague of mine regarding backend development, and he's let's say doing founder stuff as well. And he told me that it's different now. It's not fun to develop anymore. Development is now a form of AI work, and you wait a lot until the AI is taking a look. Then you discuss a lot. Then you discuss. This is a little bit like you talk about instead of walking the walk, you talk the talk. And somehow, while you talk the talk, you walk the walk. It is not like you walk the walk and sometimes you talk about it. It is you talk all day long about it and somehow the walk gets done. And it's very different. But regarding so the reason why it's a topic for us is that if you swipe the credit card through API of Cloud Code, you resolve a lot of issues you might have as a startup because you have other. So we are not really a startup, but we have a product which is working like a startup product, and so we have a differentiation between legacy products, which we do by hand, and we have modern, or let's say more modern products we do mainly with AI today. And there are so many implications, so many phases of where we felt like that is correct to do. Then we discussed it, we argued about that we had the conclusion that it actually isn't that bad. Actually, it's very good. Actually, it's not fun anymore. Is it now good for the money? We produce a lot, but do we actually sell as much as we produce? There are so many implications regarding AI. I can say that AI works in the sense of what AI is supposed to do. The point is more, can an organization do something with it in a productive way, in a real productive way? Or is it actually like a new trend we see coming
Mm-hmm.
that AI is working, but somehow you cannot translate it into real productivity as a startup, as a CTO, as a small business?
Mm-hmm.
It's a different thing than a large company. It's harder, much harder to implement AI into large companies than it is into small companies. Small companies, you have 5 MacBooks Pros, and you put in Cloud Code in Shell, and that's it. That's your AI implementation. And in large companies, it's much more complicated. But today's target is the startup CTO, and I can say it's an interesting path. So I was pro AI from day one, but I knew at the same moment that the old days of funny coding weekends are over for me. And it
Mm-hmm.
was since then. I never have done that anymore in my life. Since then, since 2 years now, I was sitting there at afternoon or something like that, but not coding myself anymore. And these days, I'm much more confident that things actually work, especially those late night sessions where you need to get things done or something
Mm-hmm.
doesn't work and you're stuck there. That is extremely reduced by AI. these stuck moments are not actually existing anymore. You have multiple stuck moments at the same time, which you solve right now. But on the other hand, real productivity gains is a different story. So you produce more because you have more ideas, but it is not necessarily more revenue at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
That is something we can discuss today as well, and it's extremely important for a CTO or a CEO in a startup who needs to get quickly to a market fit, to a proof. But on some point in time, you need to make a switch into actually getting away, because another side aspect is what we found out is AI, how we use it, is definitely not for juniors. It is for people who have a lot. We're talking about minimum of 10 years of very good experience. In my case, it's nearly 30 years now. So I'm a no, let's say real experience is around 2 decades, like professional experience.
I mean, they can use it, but it's definitely just amplifying their confusion, right? Not their contribution to
I think it's even
the
worse.
business outcomes.
If you don't know 100% what you do there and you push forward because everyone wants to make progress because of business reasons, then you might get into a very, very bad state. In a state where you are afraid to publish something, afraid to show it to your customers, afraid to show it to your colleagues, and you still use AI, and you ask AI, can you take a look, can you review, and you review something, and you push it, and it's still broken. And I think that is one of the reasons AI is just an extremely well done, intelligent autocompleter, and it's not making the engineering thinking work for you. It can help you with a good plan and try to help you understand everything, but if you are not able to understand the plan for implementation or the review of a or inspection of code or something like that, if you don't understand what you need to do with it and you still do it because of time, because of money, because of business reason, I think you can get quicker screwed than ever before, right?
CTOs that I talk with generally look for efficiency improvement. And usually it's the last place where we actually find it. Efficiency in the improvement in the sense of how long does it take, how long do we need to go from, column A to column B in some kind of development process, or from idea to production, basically. And they're looking for efficiency on that. Generally, the big strategic moves, not drastic, just impactful, so moves that don't involve firing people, that CTOs can make with or without my help, have usually to do with focus and killing projects and minimizing parallel work and minimizing distractions and minimizing how often their best people are working on nonsense tasks. And that's also where this comes in with AI tools, or if you're prototyping with some vibe coded solutions, it can appear very productive. It can appear that you're getting an advantage over your competition compared to what you're used to pre-Cloud, pre-Codex. But everybody's doing it, so you're not really getting an advantage. Like, your competition is also doing it. Like, they have the same tools you have, right? So that's number one. And number two, well, if you're using AI tools to go faster, then your customer also expects you to be done sooner. And I think that's where most CTOs struggle. Because we never talk about, hey, we're using this tool to go faster. Are we actually going faster? That's the wrong question. Like, let's just assume it is faster. If we're going faster, if all the developers report of going faster, is their work done sooner? Or is their work better in some way? Or do they discover that they're going down the wrong direction sooner and sort of redirect? Or do they finish in the same time, but they manage to do 4 iterations instead of just 1, right? So these questions are valuable, but I see very few people focus down on this. What I see the most is lines of code per PR and how many PRs you merge, and whether the AI reviewed it and you had some like agentic loop running in there, or whether it's just vibe coded up and it appears to be mostly fine. Because vibe coding has a ceiling, of course. It's amazing for building prototypes. It's amazing from going from nothing to just having something in production, wiring up look and feel, design, using an example, a template, filling it out. The problem is you can't vibe code the same solution with 5 developers. Like, they can't all be running 5 agents on their machines working on the same thing at the same time, because it's touching everything, right? And then you got to ask yourself, well, it's great for one engineer, but clearly your company isn't running based on the output of your best engineer's CPU power of their laptop.
So
right?
many startup CTOs think of, do we have backend team and frontend team early on? Or do we actually have full stack? And if you use Cloud Code intensively, you are definitely full stack again, because every form of separation you do, or microservices, will bring you to the point that vibe coding doesn't make sense for you, or agentic coding. It doesn't make sense for you, right? You actually need to make a decision into the direction of that a developer is good enough to make the entire vertical working, like front end, back end, the entire loop must be covered, and then an engineer with 1 or 2 agents at the same time is doing multiple tasks at the same time, which is a new kind of exhaustion problem for a human being, because the expectations get higher. You need to do this, and if something fails, you have another problem.
Like, you're controlling both ends of the spectrum, right? You're moving the goalpost for speed while at the same time moving the goalpost for the expectations. So it's very dangerous. So if you're prioritizing purely to favor sort of short-term measurements of efficiency or short-term measurements of speed, you're still at risk if you're also moving the goalpost, and you're still at risk considering the tools cost money. I saw a lot of engineers max out their Fable subscription this week, just because they're in this FOMO thread.
I'm using Solid right now because it's
I need to spend it.
$2 per 1 million token.
I need to spend it before they shut it down again, right? Like, it's sort of.
I think
there is that level of AI psychosis still that impacts a lot of teams. But then coming back to the topic, and thank you, Gustavo, for pointing it out. What to prioritize? Like, well, what should CTOs prioritize? I think from fundamentally, your prioritization strategy should be dealing with de-risking your delivery approach, not just making it more efficient or making it appear faster to build stuff. Because and Dan North had a recent talk, I think last year on GoTo, about this concept where he's talking about risk-adjusted value to the customers, right? Where a lot of CTOs essentially discount or ignore the meeting part of the requirements sooner, right? So generally, from like a systems approach of a team of 20 engineers, you're looking at, okay, how soon can I get something to demo, and when can I get the full feature set? And if that is a too large problem, how do I break it down? But usually we're aiming at it from like a strategic level as all of my features are kind of equal, but there are some that are harder and more important to get right? So the data flow, the areas where either there's a security concern or business risk or very expensive to rework, rewrite, or re-architect, or maybe acquire hardware for. And then that's where most of our money goes. That's where most of our attention goes. And then you have AI fill in the blanks with the boring stuff, which is the front end work, the Terraform script, if it can get it right. The initial sort of going from blank page to project setup, AI is great for that. But then for the day-to-day work, AI can collaborate a lot with you with regards to building stuff. But the prioritization isn't how do I build it faster. The prioritization from like a CTO's perspective benefits only to the business if we can figure out how to close our feedback loops faster, right? So the point of continuous integration is that we force our output to connect with the feedback generating mechanisms. If we just generate more output, but we get the same amount of feedback for more output, then we didn't need most of that output, right? And that's where a lot of engineering teams run into a dead end. They just token max like crazy, and then the amount of feedback is the same, right? Like they can't absorb more feedback than they could before AIs. And I think if you are going to push or have some kind of mandate as a CTO to prioritize AI usage and focus on being more productive, then the number one question needs to be, how do I speed up the feedback mechanism, right? So how do the engineers learn faster now that AI is in the loop? That is what I would prioritize. And we did that experiment with a few teams. Works out really well, but it's definitely not easy. It's very unintuitive. It's quite noir. Like we're discovering it while it's being discovered on the market. Like there's very few books that talk about it. So it is actually difficult to find some already solved problems or sort of pattern match to existing modes of working like this, because it's so fresh and it's changing all the time.
I don't even think that there is a standard way of handling that. I don't think it will be available in the next years to come, because AI amplifies the uniqueness of your process. It's not like the idea of continuous delivery, which had a overarching meta idea behind it. And you had the choice of the CI/CD pipeline and these kind of aspects, and maybe you had a staging branch or not, or something like that. These kind of things, yes, but everything else was a little bit like streamlined, so it was clearly you could see, oh, that's continuous. But I don't think it's the same with AI. I think we see more and more very unique. So people will become more creative in how they solve the issues. Some companies work clearly, and I see those work clearly towards a focus on the seniors and absolutely focus on juniors. Others tried with a lot of juniors doing now simple stuff because they are agencies. They just, have 20 web pages to maintain, and they use AI as juniors for this. Is another strategy. So how do you actually bring those two together? You don't, because it's totally different approach. It was back then before AI already, but with AI, they basically amplify their way instead of changing it. I see no one changing towards a new AI strategy. I see everyone using AI to enhance their current strategy. I never saw anyone changing their strategy because of AI. I haven't seen that. I don't see it. It's not there. If someone is listening to that, leave us a comment if you do so.
I mean, I have seen it pulled off in a lot of my teams. It is possible, and it is fun. Like, it's oddly satisfying, I don't even know what to call it. Like,
what is exactly the fun aspect of that one?
Well, in the sense that to solve it, to change your strategy, to integrate it into your SDLC in a way that
your strategy before wasn't working.
Sorry?
If your strategy beforehand wasn't working, but if you have a working strategy and you change it to another possibly working strategy, the fun aspect could be some form of waste of time in that moment. That is what I want to point out a little bit. Like, I wouldn't change anything in the strategy if I don't need to, because I have different things to do than changing working strategies if it's working.
Why?
Why not? Well, why should I?
Why wouldn't you adapt the strategy if there's a better way of doing things?
This is what I just said. Argument. When there is no better way of doing it, it's just a different.
No, but my point is, we adopted strategies where using the AIs as soon as possible turned out to be much more productive.
Yeah, of course. But if you can use AI with an existing strategy, and it works and it's proven, and you don't need to change much, it's much more efficient, actually.
No, but it works much better if you change it. Like, that's the.
Is it so?
That's the point I'm making. Yeah.
Is it so? Because I wouldn't say that you need to change the strategy to a strategy we can't define yet, and it's better. I wouldn't say that. Because
I wouldn't generalize. This
is the point, not generalizing
it. We adjusted it. We adjusted it in a few teams, and it works better. But obviously, if you're just gonna tack on AI onto your existing process, it's gonna provide some noticeable changes. I'm not sure it's gonna make it better, but there will be some changes to it. But if you adapt your strategy in addition to that, and it's beneficial, then absolutely. We've tried in very different teams. We tried the approach of involving the agents on like a commit level, on a project planning level, on a to the customer facing level. And what worked best was putting AIs where they facilitated more interactions between the employees. That turned out to be very, very helpful. Where instead of using it as like a background process, like a cron job, where it's you're telling it to do something and then it does it, and then it's kind of like a black box and you review its output later, that it is sort of the facilitator of conversation. So that rather than a product person calling a meeting, now you go I saw this a few hours ago in one of those channels where this experiment succeeded well. Was we built an internal bot that sort of understands the DSL of our company, and the product person comes into the appropriate channel, so where the engineers are, given that some part of the domain, and started asking questions of our internal bot, right? And then people saw the conversation and chimed in and said, no, that part the bot got wrong, it's a hallucination, but we can do this. What are you exploring? Right? So they went on to this process where they started conversing with the bot publicly. So, and one of the patterns that I'm seeing that works very well for AI adoption is introducing bots in such a manner that conversing with the bots is public. So on Linear, on Slack, on your sort of visible spaces, so people can overhear them and join them and watch them. That more than anything was very valuable feedback from the few teams that went like really deep on this. But I'm also working with teams that are sort of doing that whole tell the AI to do something and then I wake up tomorrow, do a PR. I don't see that to be highly productive. Yes, when it has to do with some low-hanging fruits, review, security audits, plugging holes, basically, but not novel Genesis custom software creation, not where the engineers need to learn, right? So it's great for environments and for chores, I would say, where there's very little learning involved and where you kind of know what you would do if you had all the time in the world to do it. It's just not economical for a human to be looking at everything and reading everything, right? So in those areas, it's very valuable. And if your business involves that kind of strategically involves harnessing that kind of attention for your primary or secondary revenue stream, then absolutely adapt your strategy, plug AI tools into those areas, and have your engineers, have your people adapt to new kinds of workflows and experiment with them. Like, there's nothing wrong with that kind of experimentation. What I would push back on is this whole idea of pressuring mid-level junior engineers to work faster just because they have access to a company Fable account. It's like, if they don't know how to build something, you just tell them, just ask Fable to do it, and and let us review it together. Generally, that backfires so fast that it's just not worth going super deep.
There's where the tension is. So when you are getting back to the topic, startup CTO, you need to make decisions how you staff your team, and most don't really staff only extremely experienced seniors. They have the thing with the junior developers, and they have the pressure, so we always have tension. So what I miss a little bit in what you describe is the tension of a real startup. So I don't know a startup which doesn't have tension. I don't
Absolutely.
know.
There's always going to be some.
Experimentation.
Yeah.
Who's doing that? I don't know many people who are doing that. Some have 1 hour time to actually a day per developer to help another developer. There is no time for experimentation, and there's this junior problem. So why should you invest now money into training someone for 12 months to bring him to a point where this person can work autonomously if you can hire someone who can actually do that already, in the assumption that you find someone who can do that already.
I mean,
And that is a little bit the tension right now.
Strategically speaking, there is no tension. Specifically on that example that you mentioned, I don't see it. Like, either, you're saying, why should I train somebody? Well, compared to what? Like, whoever will be in the job will be learning. So you're training them. You might be training them on the domain, not how to program, but it is what they learn about their product, what your customer, your market, that's really valuable. Right? So that if you are in a space where you can get shit done without your engineers learning anything for 12 months, then such people will and can be replaced by people who are learning and have access to AI tools.
But that,
right?
that is what is done out there. That is the problem.
But strategically speaking, that is a very low margin, high risk situation for such a business.
But that is the case, because they get some money CTO, and they have a time frame for 12 months. So they don't have the horizon to train someone, because for them the world ends on that 12.
That's like, again, I'm not talking about that. They have time to train someone. They have exactly 12 months to train somebody, right? So, and whoever they will hire will be learning, right? So my point is, like, the reason why you hire somebody experienced in a startup is so that you extend your runway or fail fast. Like, I mean, you can have it either way. But generally speaking, you're not hiring somebody incompetent that you know how to train. Like, you're hiring somebody for a job and you don't necessarily know how to train them. So your job, your prioritization strategy as a CTO is to how to de-risk the situation as much as possible. If you can, if you have, your primary work, if day one in your startup is setting up some kind of demo because you need to go to an investor rally, absolutely. If Claude can vibe code it up with Fable, and you have somebody in your organization, a founder, a CTO, a founding engineer, a staff engineer, a junior engineer, who can conjure up something convincing, then for those 2 days, that work is valuable. The problem is that it doesn't de-risk your situation of creating a product that is scalable to your market needs, especially if you want more than just a single user application. We also need to talk about, vibe coding is sexy because you can go from nothing to a working application, but usually vibe coded applications are single user, right? So if you want a multi-tenant application, that already becomes very complicated, because you will want to get the details right about how the tenants are split up, how login works, how those things work. And if you're not using out-of-the-box solutions, which most vibe coding cloud-hosted IDEs come with exactly solutions to those kinds of problems, which just facilitates more vendor lock-in, more risk to your organization. If you don't get those details right early, you're not really benefiting a lot from the productivity increase. You did benefit from having something to show on like a product rally, but so did your competition. But you're not actually closer to building the real product. There is a gap to be solved in, if I build it faster with AI, well, I didn't learn anything in the process. So if you can now devote time that you saved by not having to build out that thing that wouldn't facilitate learning anyway, because it's a prototype, right? If you can now devote that time that you saved into actually learning about your business, learning about your product, learning about your coworkers, learning about the market, or hiring somebody who's competent, right? Like, that's valuable. But I don't agree with you with the stance.
It's not my stance,
because it's a startup.
It is not my stance. You need to listen. It is what I see out there, and experimentation is not a topic out there where I am. And in basically every company, it's not. People need to get things done. People, they are always under pressure. There's always the next deadline. There is always this backlog we were discussing since years because of that. And those are the issues of the people, not how to train people to become better. It is how to get things done faster, because they have.
I don't think you're listening to me. Like, what I'm saying is, you don't hire them as an educational body, and you're like, you hire somebody consciously who is incompetent, and you're going to use the runway of the startup to train them in software engineering so after 12 months they can build something for you. No, of course you don't hire them for that. What I am saying is that if you hire competent people, on the winning path of the startup, your best people will have learned something from day one until the projected time where your runway would have run out if you don't extend it. So there will be learning there. I'm not saying they will be learning the craft that they need, that they will be going from zero to hero.
That's the reason why I picked up on that, and that was never closed. It was the junior who is not allowed to use AI to work. That was the topic.
No, but that's my point. That's my point. You can your job, your prioritization as a CTO isn't to try to figure out how to get away with juniors using Claude and how to manage them to use Claude, or how to avoid juniors using Claude, or how to manage sort of the junior level of the hierarchy to make a productive leaner. We also need to assume that it's probably going to be leaner if you're going to be spending a lot on AIs for the same budget. If you're going to have a leaner organization, the ecosystem is definitely shifting, where it is very hard to get into software engineering. So there is a huge difference between Gen Z AI first junior engineers and junior engineers who are still junior engineers after like 5 years of academic pursuit, and they started in like 2020, thereabouts, right? So there's a huge difference in the caliber of engineers, and those engineers that are a little bit too old school and they haven't kept up with all the new tools are unattractive. I'm not saying they can't be productive, but they're unattractive on the current market, especially with the huge influx of very experienced engineers who have fled layoffs from big tech companies. Plus, there's an appearance of job seekers, because most people who are job seeking are using AI tools to send out their custom fit CVs to thousands of companies. So you also spam everybody who's hiring is being spammed, and it creates this illusion that there is a surplus on the
person. AI gets spammed by AIs.
Fair enough. Fair enough. But fundamentally, we wanted to talk about prioritization as a CTO to capture this gap between, okay, I'm vibe coding something that's clearly a prototype, and we are building something like we're building a rocket ship. The other extreme is building it too long, too slowly, and with too few safety valves and too few feedback mechanisms. So you build it in isolation, you gold plate it, and then you ship it. And there isn't actually any natural force. Your job, your prioritization mechanism as a CTO is to realize that there isn't any natural force that would urge you off of the extreme. If you're building prototypes because you're rushing, Christina mentions in chat, it's a rush. Wait, you've copied it. It's a rush, just a rush to beat my competition. No productive thinking. Productive from my company's point of view. I just look for other companies. I want the other things that they're doing. I want more, just this. Mm-hmm. Right? So it's this FOMO, rushing, sort of speed sort of mentality that the AI tools can incentivize or sort of can trap you in if you let them. But fundamentally, there is no natural force that if you're building a prototype that then would kick in and say, prototype successful, now it's time to do that other thing. No, there is no such force, right? And the same is the same is true for that slow. A lot of people call this engineers usually call this corporate. It's like there's a lot of bureaucracy and everything. Like there's like slow rollout, lots of planning, lots of analysis, lots of blah, 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 many requirements. When you're done with shipping that product, there is no force naturally that would tell you, okay, we made a big bet and it was risky and we got lucky, we survived, and now clearly we need to stop doing it. No, you'll just continue doing that. Right? So your job as a CTO is to establish corrective behavior when you're too far off the extreme. Right? So if you're feeling like the example that Christina mentioned, if you're feeling like rushing, you need to go to market, it's your job as a CTO to establish opposing forces of, hey, yes, rushing. Rushing all well and good, but is the product being built sooner? Is revenue increasing, corresponding to the level of speed increase that we claim to be having, right? Like these things need to be consistent with each other. And the same is true for the other example, which you might be too slow to integrate, and you might be too slow to integrate because you're actually buried in like AI code reviews. You're building 7 things. Like every engineer has like 7 parallel builds, 7 work trees open at all times, and then you're just waiting for the right time to integrate them. So both extremes can be AI induced. It's not just the rushing. I see a lot of teams struggle to just stay ahead of the tickets and the branches and the PRs that the AI agents are creating, and they just don't have time to review them, and they don't have any trust into merging them without review. And I see this a lot in open source projects where it's starting to get malicious. So your primary job as a CTO is to make sure that this immune system gets established, because if it doesn't get established, then the crazy people will be running the asylum. Like the most anxious, the most emotionally attached, AI boosted person in the company who can turn money into code, they'll be running the show. And that's a very risky way of running a business. And usually it leads to bankruptcy. So it's not that juniors can't do this, but you can do this with juniors and get lucky. But your job as a leader is to make sure that there are some, I wouldn't say guardrails, that might be too technical, but there must be some culture incentives to keep people on the right track. If we claim we're speeding up due to AI, well, there needs to be a business outcome that is also getting better due to the speed up, right? So if you're in a Formula 1 car and we claim, hey, our max speed has increased, well, the max speed better result in more wins, or better placements, or better qualifiers. Like we can't just claim more speed, because more speed without any other outcome is just more danger for the driver. So if we're not winning, then it's a net negative, especially if it costs money to maintain.
Yeah, but I would say that this is necessarily the case. There is enough maturity in the companies out there that they can see that for themselves. It's not like the people are that blinded. I think that there is a natural tension of the market. They have a tight budget. They need to pay salaries, and many companies pay their salaries from the direct revenue and not from 2 years of revenue or a big investor. That is oftentimes the case as well. Or they have a runway based on an investor. That is the same. So you have a limited time until you can do this. In both cases, you have the pressure to make more money and to get something done, which makes more money. And it's a little bit like, it is easy to say afterwards. And I see that tendency, especially on senior developers. I told you, fuck that. Fuck that. Absolutely.
Yeah, we should have done X.
I basically throw out everyone who's coming like that after the second warning, because that is so unnecessary and toxic in a team. You make decisions as a team, and if they fail, you think from that, and you don't play hindsight games. Because if you have a timeline of 12 months and you don't know, and you need to make hard decisions, things can go sideways in all directions, and no matter what you do. And what I would be careful is to go too much into the direction of try to say that AI is automatically creating mess and we are only building prototypes. I think that narrative, I don't see that. I never met a company who's actually building prototypes. I see prototype building as an idea for a meeting, but then they actually build the real stuff on there too. That is what I see. I'm just talking about what I see right now. So what the people actually built, that was the reason why I in the beginning said that vibe coding is just basically the synonymous meaning of agentic coding, which we tried to divide, but no one is doing that. So I stopped doing that myself as well. So people do use coding agents right now to build the real thing faster on day 2. Because day 1 is a prototype thing, I agree, but this is more like the mock-up for the meeting. Everyone agrees, then they build. The reason for that is basically, and that is probably the type of economy I am in. So I'm not so much in the American type of startup economy or the British one. I was in the British one and the Gibraltar one for 1 or 2 projects, but there was actually the same thing. There was a tight budget, tight timeline that was pre-AI, but we needed to get these things done. And it is the same like the companies I help with right now in Germany and in Europe primarily. They have the issue that they need to get the next thing done so the customer pays them. So it is the direct revenue. The sooner they get done, the sooner they get rewarded. So AI actually helps it. The problem is they do it 3 times, and then they basically need to fake that they are done and to wait for the rest. So it still looks like they need long time, because if they don't do that after 2 or 3 years, if they would be honest, they would get half of the money in the future. So it is basically, in the first place, you are faster, you make more wins, but on the long term, you fail because you actually destroy your business with that, because you substitute yourself. Or you reduce to, let's say, the best people in your, and you don't need the people like the support engineers who helped you getting things done, make translations for you, make presentations for you. Those people you don't need anymore. AI is doing that for you, and you only keep you keep the senior level. So agency definitely going towards smaller but more efficient seniors doing multiple things at the same time. I know that from my and but for companies like who has large SaaS products, I saw the very same thing. They don't hire freelancers anymore. They don't hire externals or contractors anymore, because the internal people now can do the same amount of work in the same time. That I saw in 3 companies just in the last 3 months. So I see that people use AI efficiently, but I'm worried about the long-term consequences, not the short-term. Short-term is win. But I think what you are afraid of is, in my case, a long-term problem.
Like to me, I would flag let's say, an abandoned artifact as a win, right? So a lot of code. So generally in startups, code churn is high, right? So what you want to avoid strategically as a CTO is the appearance of very low code churn, and then the deadline gets close, and then code churn starts spiking like crazy. That's what you want to avoid, right? Because that's you introducing breaking changes, that's you screwing up something last minute, that's sort of that death march mentality of let's squeeze, and then after the launch, demo, whatever, everybody's tired. Or maybe this has been going on for 7-8 years, and it becomes this cycle where you can roll out features, and then there's a cycle where you can't roll out anything because you're just tired or you're burnt out, or it just created such a mess that then you need to clean up. So from my perspective, what I started differentiating with the CTOs that I'm coaching is we started differentiating LLM generated, like agentic churn from human churn, right? So if an AI created a branch with 2,000 lines of code and then got abandoned, I don't see that as a problem anymore. Like I automatically saw that as a problem, let's say last year, because if there was 2,000 lines of code changes in a branch somewhere, it meant that a human has invested a lot of time building that, right? And all of our metrics, all of our organizational patterns, and what we're looking for, and engineering management signals were already aimed at trying to prevent that, like signaling that very harshly and prevent that. So nowadays, I'm leaning a little bit more softer towards that, but we do have to differentiate. If a human did that, then yes, that's a huge problem. Or if an agent did that and the human did nothing while that was happening, right? So if instead of spending 2 days building that PR, they just sat in their chair waiting for the agent to build a PR, like that would still be human human code churn. So I'm mentioning this example because for me, I see a lot of value in humans exploring. They artificially spike up an activity with agents. So, for example, a staff engineer doing some kind of exploration. Hey, I'm thinking about changing this. I'm thinking about changing that. And it creates this whole work branch. It burns tokens to create this whole work branch, but it doesn't result in them actually doing the work. It's sending off something, it's like a low-hanging fruit sort of idea. So, or a prototype where the idea is in a too early stage for the human to give it their full attention. There is the risk of multitasking too much, right? So stressing out this person. But I see it used very productively if acceleration, where you have a main task, you have some slack time, you say, oh, okay, well, we always have these kinds of issues. I'm going to check, okay, was there a risky delivery yesterday? Was there a risky bug? Is there some low-hanging fruit that I can fix really quickly? Is there some triage request on customer support that can be solved with 2 lines of code somewhere? Like have an agent, go explore, go off in some kind of hidden process behind the scenes and give me a PR tomorrow. I think those kinds of processes are healthy. You can definitely prioritize them. But again, advice for you engineering leaders out there, your business strategy can't depend on such behavior, right? So where I see the sort of the stupid risk behavior, like the irresponsible version of this, is when you're saying as a CTO that this is how we need to work to build features 5 times faster, so everybody have like multiple parallel things in their work trees, and you guys need to deliver all 5, and you need to orchestrate, like you need to be a dirigent and sort of orchestrate all your agents in the perfect harmony, and everybody has 5, and we have 10 people, and then we have 50, and like that's La La Land, right? So if you're and that's where the Kool-Aid is sort of dripping from social media, right? So if you're the kind of founder or CTO or sort of visionary that is, let's say, amenable to this kind of influence from social media, that you are digging into the FOMO and this urge to rush, and this is what you're pushing down to your engineering teams, better start measuring fast and early. Because it needs to make sense from day one. And it probably doesn't make sense, but you probably won't believe it if you're being completely emotional about it. If it's just FOMO, or if it's token maxing, or if your primary competitor is doing it, and then you also feel like you need to do it. And there's all kinds of irrational gambling-like, FOMO-like psychosis happening in the industry. And it will be silly to ignore it. And it will be silly to pretend that you're completely immune to it as well, of course. So what I'm getting to is that there is a lot of healthy things that are happening out of this craze, out of this changes in our industry, and absolutely it's having an impact. But whether we're all going to lose our jobs about it, I don't think so. Like there's going to be a lot of.
No, I'm a stoic thinker. I help people to get out of their misery, so there will be a lot of work for me.
There's going to be a lot of money to be made in cleaning up AI stuff. So don't worry. like we're good. we're good.
Looking for all the psychoses out there.
Absolutely. So from a CTO's perspective, and if you want to learn from great CTOs, I can recommend Charity Majors' blog on Substack. There is a case to be made for mandating AI usage, but it's not for speed, right? Like the purpose of any kind of tool usage, especially if you're on the continuous delivery bandwagon, which I hope you are. No shade if you're not and you have a better process, but
if you mean me, I am.
Just but it's what we know, right? But it's what we know works well, and if you find something that works better, it's fine, right? So it's, if you're going to mandate AI usage, be very, very, very careful that you're not just incentivizing some soft token maxing where you're expecting people to pump out a visible artifact very fast, and then they just get stuck on parallel branches that nobody's reviewing, and then sunk cost fallacy kicks in, and you just start merging all that.
I would
Just to
quickly,
not.
as a response to that, I would quickly get away or tell how we do it actually quite successfully, because we have a mixture still of legacy agency stuff with SaaS products we have where we run for enterprise level companies and mid-level German companies, and we have this new Coach Bar product which we are launching, still in the launching phase right now. This same software basis, so it's basically the same thing. So we have specific standards how we need to work, otherwise we are out because of the enterprise levels. So that is how we cannot just vibe code something together, but we actually use just prompts. So we actually don't code ourselves anymore, and it's not because of speed. Speed is probably a result because we are pretty good in what we do, because we do it for so many years right now, and it is the same thing. We haven't switched much, so we are we're already good before AI. The point about is that it actually is less stressful to work with AI, because you have an issue. You, first of all, before you actually get into the issue, you don't worry about, you have all your context files. We had never before such a well-documented system as we have today because of AI. So we are incentivized to do that. And we just need to pass the email and the screenshot to the AI. And we don't really look at a token. They are not that expensive, to be honest. So it is okay to have it's okay. Let's just push it. And you get back a very good overview with Opus. We use Opus for that, not Sonnet, but Opus, not Fable. Fable is not necessary. You get so much of a valuable overview of what the possible things are. You have a good reason to quickly talk to a colleague, discuss that issue, make a new issue indirectly, not in a ticket board, we make it directly in the code base, an issue, and that will be worked down in parallel. It is a little bit like that. So we have a clear point of how we want to tackle that on an engineering level. We have at least 4 eyes making the decision how to work with that. And at some point, there is an engineering plan done by the AI, iterated through, let it run next issue or parallel next issues. That you can do while sitting there waiting for the other thing, talking to your colleague because of other things, talking to a client because of the other thing. And then day is done. It's not about, we can get now 5 things at the same time to churn it out somehow to have something more. That is not what we do. But the overall stress, so we get more done because this digging work, this archaeological work in old code bases would take so much time that a person would just do that for a day and we wouldn't get to the next thing. So overall, we are faster. But not as a race. We are faster as a result of a more optimized workflow, because most of our work is, because the smallest code base we have right now is 500K. So we have multiple, one is nearly 1 million, and we are not that many people. So the issue we have is the understanding of what actually went wrong, right? So what is the possible issue? Is it a race condition? Is it a stale cache somewhere? Is it something like that? And if you give the AI the correct context, it will find you with 90% probability the correct reason. And the last 10% you need to bring as a engineer, as an experienced engineer, and say, you know what, that doesn't make sense. Oh yeah, that's actually plausible. And then you dig in, you find the reason, you ask for a possible solution, you review the solution, 2 or 3 things, you discuss it quickly, then you let it run. And doing that is in fact faster than do it all by yourself, because
Absolutely.
the integration of the plan, and there I absolutely agree with Brian Finster, coding isn't the part where you make a big difference as a human anymore. AI has solved that problem. And the problem is the engineering aspects, which are more than ever important, because no one in our company, and it was for years, starting with typing in front end, typing the first HTML tag, or in back end, creating the first file, and then thinking, what do I want to write here? Right? That is not the case anymore.
Like the overarching usage of LLMs that I see productive teams adopt is just using LLMs to go at the same speed as they did before, but they're basically using it as a compiler to, instead of a complex language like Python or TypeScript, use simple language like English. right? So they're just using it as like a second pass compiler to devote the same amount of time to writing the code, and in some cases, they can pattern match a little bit faster when working on that kind of appropriate task. But again, the code writing isn't so much the primary bottleneck. It's more the amount of decisions that you can make. So if you're trying to use LLMs, so if you're coming at this problem from like a CTO level, so like a strategic level of there's a bunch of problems that I and my engineers don't know how to solve, then the AI is useful if your engineers know how to solve them, if success is one of the possible outcomes and you use the tools to get there, or if you're just on the edge, and you're not quite sure how to do something, and you're using AIs to explore and narrow down that space, that's helpful, right? That phrasing would be an accelerator. It would be productivity positive, let's say, in a lot of cases. But if you don't know how to build something without the AI, if you don't know how to build it, and you're not even close, and you're just asking it to build it, that's always going to be risky. That's always going to be a net negative, because you're just delaying in hiring the person who does. You're just delaying in training the person who does. You're just delaying in facing the fact that, beyond vibe coding the prototype, you don't really know how to continue improving this product, right? So the main risk is that a lot of people find themselves in this situation, right? So for you as a CTO, one of your priorities, and not top one, but like one of the priorities is definitely to help expose or help highlight or help surface people who are acting like this in your organization. Because I'm sure there is somebody who's touching something they shouldn't be just because they feel ultra powerful because of Claude's omnipotence inside their organization. So for you, it is imperative, because everybody's an engineer, right? Everybody can go in and touch code and tell, hey, Claude, there's a bug. A customer complained. Go look at our code base and go fix the problem. Everybody can be an engineer nowadays. So it's your job to make sure that if my staff engineers are going off on a side quest and opening up 7 agents, or if my product person is opening up the code base and spawning up 100 sub agents with Fable and token maxing the hell out of it, they know what they're doing. I'm not worried. But if somebody who isn't an engineer and he isn't even close is starting to use these tools in a way because they're panicking, because they're rushing, because they're impatient, because they want to get around the engineers and do something, and guys, I have to tell you, sometimes it's the CEO, sometimes it's the founder, sometimes it's somebody from marketing, and sometimes, and I hate to say this, sometimes they get lucky. Sometimes they act like this, they vibe code up the right solution at the right time, and they get lucky. And man, is that a dangerous drug to have in your organization.
That is survivorship bias, by the way. So most aren't successful with that one. And so we have, first of all, so I'm extensive user. We are extensive users of Claude Code. From day one, you know that I've made videos about that. I never stopped. I spent a lot of money there. The point is, we never vibed, actually. So sometimes we do it with words, but we don't like the vibing aspect of we don't know what happens in the code base. Never happened. We built 90% of what we have today by hand over 10 years or more. Yeah. So we know exactly
you're engineers. Like, why would you vibe, right? Like that's a completely
yes. And I wouldn't have vibed something from startup. So from bottom up, which means that the foundation is so important that we can use AI for that, but step by step. It is really like discussing every step. You need to have an extremely well. So you said it, multi-tenant. We have an enterprise level multi-tenant system with clustering and sharding. That's a brain fuck. You don't do that by wish list of Claude.
You gotta be careful you gotta be careful where the models or the data streams overlap and interact, because it can be very complicated to untangle them. And that is the typical thing that engineers need to worry about and keep in your head.
Yeah, just as an example, a multi-tenant system are normally logically isolated, not physically isolated.
Yes, not physically.
You can shard by physically, but then they cannot connect to each other. So some clients want to have isolation because the BISO, ISO, CISO hunt you down for not being isolated. And the next feature request is yes, but this
just in Germany.
Should be
just in Germany.
as well. No, that's brutal. They hunt you down. It's like
I know.
They shoot you on the street. There's no joke here. But actually, it's like
one of my companies is going through the same process right now, and I know I see it. They're in the energy space. The energy space, the electrical grid and
about
stuff
all
like that.
CVEs out there because you always get an email forwarded how critical everything is.
And constant pen testing and ISO this and ISO that.
Like, oh my fucking god again. So, and we found this. That's actually not the case.
And here's a list of all the things that might be risky looking at your code base, and it's AI generated.
It's like, we expect by tomorrow morning an answer. Like,
so
right?
I just want to put a lid on a topic that we opened up earlier with junior engineers, right? With the framing that we just created with this, if you're experienced or really close, like if the solution is in your possible outcomes, if the probability of you solving the problem by yourself is high, then do whatever you want. Like, you'll be competent. Use the tool for coding, use the tool for thinking, use the tool for planning, use the tool for vibe coding. You'll figure it out. You're competent. You're an engineer. What's dangerous for juniors is if they don't know how to solve it. If the solution is not within their possible outcomes, if the probability of them solving the problem is extremely low, and solving this kind of problem is important for their growth, if they just then go and vibe code it and spend all their day, gambling, essentially, just spending tokens and getting the right solution, and then they solve it, and then they don't understand it, that's a problem. Because now you have an engineer who doesn't know how to maintain such a system. They didn't learn anything out of the process. And the solution that works to them probably isn't recognizable from the other solutions that aren't working. If it was, then they would have probably been able to write it themselves once the AI got it wrong the first time. And that's very dangerous. And that's where I see a lot of impatience kick in. Because some managers, some product managers, engineering managers, founders, sometimes they act like this. They hire cheap junior engineers or interns, and they give them Cloud Code, and then they're like, you have Cloud Code. I'm paying big bucks for Cloud Code and small bucks for my employee. You fix problem, please. Right? That's extremely dangerous. And that's extremely toxic. Now, and that I see a lot in the industry. This kind of impatience, this kind of, I don't even know what to call it, because we usually had this sort of stigma of staff augmentation with people from the Philippines and India, and there it happens, but our code is of high quality. But now I see this with
agency behavior.
It's sort of the agency behavior, but it's also, there are some agencies that were not really. It was arbitrage. It wasn't really an agency where you got access to huge, like, amazing talent and somebody caring for the process, or like, agencies are primarily in the hospitality business. They try to make sure that the stakeholder is happy. A lot of agencies, they're doing staff augmentation from like cheap, like, lower cost of living areas. They're just doing arbitrage. They're not really feeling responsible for what they deliver. They just matchmake with cheap labor to a high cost of living area where they can afford.
Typically, the ticket optimization thing. There's a ticket, and they are measured by the ticket, same as.
So one of the things that I see upset engineers, upset CTOs, and possibly even increased risk of the existential risk of businesses is this evolution from this kind of arbitrage, from this kind of ticket maxing, where if you're looking at your engineers as a cost center, like a feature factory, the feature factory looks better on paper if you just token max the heck out of it, because they will appear to be more competent. But the amount of problems that they can solve that are in their solution space that could generate revenue for somebody who is competent is actually the same as not doing that behavior. Plus, it can impede their growth. So that's very dangerous. If you find wind, and I have to highlight. I'm not saying that a CTO would uniformly do this across their entire org. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that it's easy to miss. I'm saying that you have a lot of good engineers that are good engineers, and then you hire a few new people, and they might be coming from a different industry, or they might be too junior, and with them, you accidentally do it. With them, it's like, okay, I don't know how to solve it. Okay, just go ask Claude and it'll teach you. Right? Because if they were competent, they would know to ask Claude and or somebody else. But if you are now using Claude as an excuse not to make time to educate and train your people, then you shouldn't have hired them. But this idea that they will magically figure it out with Claude and that you have to tell them to go figure it out with Claude. I understand if they go figure it out with Claude. If they're an intern and they ask Claude everything and then they learn, that's fine. You know, if the purpose is learning, like teach me, like create a course for me where I will learn, I don't know, linear algebra for this task. You know, that's reasonable. But you wouldn't have to prompt somebody. You wouldn't have to tell somebody to go learn this, right? They would just know that they need this knowledge, so they would ask a LLM or maybe Google some kind of solution, some kind of course, and they would go do it, and then they would have a little bit more knowledge with which to tackle the problem. So what I'm saying is that it's very easy to accidentally fall into this trap, where a founder might just be stressed out of their mind, looking at the runway, looking at the numbers, looking at the margins, and they just push, and without even being explicitly told, the engineers will just assume, okay, if there's a problem we don't know how to solve, we'll just have Claude solve it, because if I don't know how to solve it, what harm is it if I just let Fable go extremely dangerous and just merge whatever it produces? That behavior happens accidentally, and it happens a lot. So it's very important for you as a CTO to set up cultural guardrails. Again, I hate the word. In this context, it's not the right word. But you need to keep your eyes out, essentially. Where this behavior, it will pop up, it will be sticky, it will, it is essentially the quiet quitting of 2026. People mentally checking out and they just don't think and they don't act responsibly. They just delegate to an LLM, which is irresponsible. So you need to keep your eyes open if this is happening in your organization. That would be my advice. Like, if you are in this situation, definitely tune your radar to this, because this is a new problem. Nobody was trained to handle it, and you will definitely have to handle it.
It's an identity problem. The engineers don't identify themselves more and more as engineers anymore. And that needs to be, we need to get back. So we had that already before AI, we were differentiating between programmers and software engineers. Like the people thinking about their work and the people typing the work. They think about that. And today we don't think about programmers because everyone understands now that code
sort of kind of
it's replacing programming. It's like software engineering is the thing now. The problem is now the society never learned to have the majority of software devs being engineers, because most of them, especially in Germany, actually are no trained engineers. They are basically sidekick developers. They came into
they know a language
or something like that. So we never had this idea of I need to think like an engineer and fixing these with AI.
And let's be honest, most teams don't spend a lot of time in front of a whiteboard designing solutions. Like that is a ideal that we set up for the most successful companies out there, right? But a lot of engineers who are under time constraints, they wouldn't necessarily immediately reach to a whiteboard and try to come up with a solution. Like there is still that incentive or sort of that romanticized idea that I can just sit down and start coding and talk to Fable, talk to Codex, and try to figure it out on my own, and then I involve the team. Or we call a large meeting, and then in the meeting we try to get the details right. And then the outcome of the meeting is to split up the work into smaller chunks, which is not always useful. That scatter-gather behavior can be very unproductive, right? And nowadays, most people are using the meetings to figure out what to feed their agents once they engage into that scatter-gather behavior. But I do want to highlight that scatter-gather behavior is extremely counterproductive if your engineers don't know how to solve a certain problem and you're empowering them with the capabilities of Claude, and they might get close to something that looks like a solution to the problem without actually being able to maintain such a solution, or without actually being able to extract any learnings from such a solution.
I would still urge the people to talk to each other. So you can
Absolutely.
implement something simple, like as soon as you change something that large, something like that, create a one-pager MD file, not longer than one page, so nothing to scroll, nothing complicated, a overview of a decision you want to make. Send this or commit this into the code base to a colleague, ask for review. You don't need to make pull requests for that. It's just we just push and pull for that.
What I like to do, and
And
again, this is a hack on GitHub, create a pull request and merge it. It's easier to review after you merge it if it had a pull request. It's a lot easier to keep track of, and it's a great way to
okay,
to
I just
still
have
request
we just have a folder which doesn't trigger the CI/CD pipeline.
fair.
And
Also,
we just
okay.
said
Yes.
it's a to-do in there for the person, and the person sees, oh, I need to review, and then gives a little bit of feedback inside the same document, and the agent of the other person then can continue with the context of the other. So it's a little bit like an asynchronous way of communicating, but we urge to, if we implement something of significance, have a telco about that quickly and talk about that just online, right? Have a conversation like, is that the right thing? Have we thought about everything? Because humans have the tendency when they talk to each other to see things differently than an AI would. AI is great to provide you a great overview of something, or make follow-up thoughts.
It reads
But
fast.
it reads extremely fast, and it
Yes.
can find things you couldn't.
Yes.
But often it finds things which aren't actually a problem, but it could be seen as a problem. So they say, "Oh, I found the issue," which is never the issue. But there's another topic.
Yeah. It doesn't think, right? Like the illusion is that the AI thinks fast as it reads, and that's not the case. Like
it
you
doesn't
still
see
need to do a
potential.
lot of you still need to do a lot of decision making in the process, right? So if it reads a lot of text and it cannot convert what it read into a form that is meaningful to you to make a decision, then it wasn't super useful. Well, what I would encourage leaders especially to be aware of in this context of like reading and sort of handing off documents is, please be mindful and just build awareness around when your your engineer or where your people, essentially everybody in product engineering, marketing, in sales, etc., when they lock in a little bit too much, right, and they stop talking to each other. Like be conscious of that. Be conscious of when somebody's work day involves having a conversation and then granola and then sending the granola transcripts to a ticket, and then the ticket is AI summarized, and then what they're waiting for is an AI transcription of another meeting where they were told to do something. Like just be mindful of those moments, because you don't want to risk losing all of your internal relationships in the organization for some mild efficiency on document exchange. Be extremely mindful and aware, and build awareness if you lack it. If you find that if everybody starts soloing suddenly, the best companies, the companies who perform extremely well outcome-wise on an organizational level, they use AIs on an organizational level. So it's public, so it talks to a team, so it talks to a group of people, so it talks to a class of people, stakeholders or customers, or it's sort of creating conversations and surfacing them in a public space, that is driving some kind of notifications, cron jobs. Those are the heavy hitters. Those workflows make sense. If all you're doing is using AI tools to tool augment writing and reading on an individual level, and it's completely private to them, and you're doing it individually with everybody in the organization, that's going to backfire. It has to connect your people. So you got to be careful. And of course, some balance is needed. Of course, you will have to explore the tool first, so that there will be that sort of individual level. But the purpose of that individual level is to learn the tool, to then transcend it and get it to that organizational level, to build your own bot, to build your own internal like little secretary that everybody in the organization can reference. so that if you and I are talking about a feature, that there's a bot that we can pull into the conversation and build a feature for us. Not that it's on my laptop or your laptop, or we have like this browser session and it's on my phone and nowhere else, and then we have these like weird context dump sessions, and I send you my you send me your skills folder and I send you my skills folder. No, like if it becomes hyper individuated in your organization, just be extremely mindful. And it's not prying, it's not invasive. Just ask people to work out in the open. Now, that said, a lot of engineers that I talk to that are following the YouTubes, the newsletters, etc., they are using their own private Claude or Codex or whatever keys at work. So if you mandate for them how to work, it is invasive. But the problem isn't that you're invading into their IDE space. The problem is that you didn't solve giving them the tools that they need, so then they had to use their own personal stuff. That's super sticky, that's super complicated, and it's going to turn toxic sooner or later. So if you have people use AI tools or AI augmented tools, please make sure it's from a company account, so that then you can manage these problems, so that then you can manage these processes, so then you can help people get together. Because otherwise there's going to be, oh yeah, I have that process, but it's on my personal account. Like it's not in the skills folder. Or I committed partially into the GitHub, but then it's only engineers. So that's toxic. Like that's super complicated. I haven't seen it work out well in any organization that did it. It's okay if it's a learning crutch and it's temporary and you're going towards it. But please, like it's 2026. This is now something that you will have to monitor and you'll have to solve it and you have to take care of it. And Adrian, I think we're out of time, and I think we discussed everything we wanted about this topic. So,
let's go vibe coding again.
So if you're a startup CEO in 2026, understand that vibe coding is here, it's available, and it is extremely contextualized. If you're super close to the problem space, if you understand what you're doing, it's just a tool. If you don't understand what you're doing, it's going to feel super powerful for one day, and then you're going to create a whole bunch of problems for yourself. So be very careful, and be very careful when you incentivize these kinds of behaviors accidentally across your organization, because it will come back around and bite you. So be smart, be safe, and we'll see you again next week.
See you, everyone. Goodbye.